Mrs. Kantz, and I'm here to help you guys study for your Unit 2 test and going over the answers of the Unit 2 test review sheet. If you have any questions about this, please make sure that you contact me before the test happens. Make sure that you completely fill out the test review sheet so that you can get full credit. So let's go ahead and get started. Our objectives for today, as you complete 2.21 unit assessment, we want to make sure that we score above a 70%. That is always our goal for every assignment, every test. I also want to remind you guys that using your own words, using your own knowledge, what you remember in the class is how you are going to gain your points for this test. Not using your own words, using internet resources and outside resources will result in a 0 on the test. So please make sure that there is no cheating, no plagiarism, not taking things from other sources, and using this as a test. You are testing your knowledge. You need to study using your notes, but when it comes to time to take the test, you are using your knowledge, not other resources. So let's go ahead and get started. Just think about right now, what topics do you find most difficult to understand within this unit? Now, right now, I want you to think of Unit 1 and Unit 2 all together. What topics do you find most difficult in this unit? Those are topics that you need to make sure that you either go back and study, or you also need to reach out and say, Mrs. Kantz, will you explain this concept for me better? I would be happy and willing to do that for you. So question 1 on your test says, compare and contrast the characteristics of glycogen and starch by filling out the Venn diagram. So what is only starch? What is characteristics of just starch? What are characteristics of just glycogen? And what are characteristics of both starch and glycogen? When we talk about these, we're talking about carbohydrates. So if you don't remember these, you need to go back to the carbohydrates lesson and look through that lesson, and you'll fill out the answers. Here is some of the things that are characteristics of glycogen and starch. Starch is only found in plants, as in it is stored by plants. Glycogen is the carbohydrate that is being stored by animals. They are both a type of stored glucose, and then they are both complex carbs called polysaccharides. If you do not know what the term polysaccharides means, or you're confused on complex carbs, please make sure you review that concept. Complete the table with the atoms present in each macromolecule and at least 2 examples of the macromolecule. So the first one is already filled out for you. So simple carbohydrates have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen as their atoms. That's what makes those carbohydrates up. And 2 examples would be sucrose, or table sugar, and fructose, which would be things found in your fruits. They're monosaccharides and disaccharides. So what are those complex carbohydrates? What are those atoms? What are some examples? What are the atoms in lipids? What are the atoms in proteins? And provide some examples. So here are the examples that we came up with. Complex carbs have same type of atoms as simple carbohydrates. They have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Examples would be starch, cellulose, and glycogen. We already talked about starch and glycogen. And if you don't know what cellulose is a type of carbohydrate that is not a stored energy, but used as structure for things like trees and plants. Lipids, the atoms are carbon and hydrogen. Examples would be fats, oils, waxes. Proteins. Remember, proteins adds that fourth element in carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. And we talked about enzymes, hemoglobin, keratin, collagen, and we talked about amino acid chains making up those polypeptides making up the structure of a protein. Question 3, what is an enzyme? How do enzymes speed up chemical reactions? Explain activation energy and how enzymes affect it. An enzyme is a protein that behaves like a catalyst that speeds up chemical reactions, but are not used or changed in the reaction. So once it's put into a reaction, it doesn't change, it's not used up, but it's added to a reaction to speed up that chemical reaction. It speeds it up, so the questioning of how do enzymes speed up the chemical reaction? They speed it up by lowering the reaction's activation energy. How much energy is needed for the reaction to occur? They do this by bringing molecules together in just the right way in bonding. And if the enzyme did not do this, the molecules would have to use up more energy trying to find each other. Enzymes are able to bring molecules together to bond more easily. Remember, you can always pause this video so that you can review these things. You do not have to keep it going, so if you need more time to look at an answer, please make sure you pause the video, write your answers down, make sure you're understanding what you're writing down. So just because I have it on the board written out for you does not mean this is what you need to write down. You need to pick out how you understand it. So if you don't know the word catalyst, you need to figure out a different way to explain what enzymes are. So you can always say enzymes are a molecule that speeds up chemical reactions, or a protein. Enzymes are a protein that speeds up chemical reactions. Use the terms you know. So fourth question, describe the structure and function of the following molecules. Lipids. What's the structure? Those are phospholipids. They have the long nonpolar tail with no electrical charge and a polar head. So that phosphate group is the head, which is charged, and that lipid, nonpolar tail, filled with carbons and hydrogens, is nonpolar. Function, it's hydrophobic, means that it doesn't like to mix with water. So it's good for forming cell membranes in the body to help monitor what is passing through the membrane. So what are the other things for starch, cellulose, and amino acids? Here's another thing. Starch. Starch, many glucose linked together in branching chains. Those branching chains are storing lots of energy. Cellulose. This is a type of carbohydrate, remember. So starch and cellulose are both carbohydrates. Many glucose linked together, but the bonds are very difficult to break apart, which means that it's giving structure. So think of a tree and its hard structure. That cellulose is giving it that structure. Amino acids. We have that central carbon with 4 parts attached to it, 1 hydrogen, one amino acid group, one carboxyl group, and the R group, which is unique to be able to combine and fold to create that specific protein. And then the function is to be that sequence is going to determine the structure of the protein and the function. And that R group is going to be what makes each amino acid unique. Again, pause if you need to write these things down. If you don't remember what these things mean, you need to go back and study it and look at it. What do you know about this stuff and what do you need to still find out? Question 5, explain the similarities and differences between RNA and DNA. DNA is a double helix. Remember, it's that twisted ladder. It's going to hold all the genetic information within an organism. So passing on of that information from parent to offspring, that's DNA. RNA, it's that single strand, that spiral staircase without the railing on one side. And it's going to be using the instructions from the DNA to help build proteins. It's made up of nucleic acids. Those nucleic acids contain a 5-carbon sugar and a phosphate group. That's going to be the backbone or that ribbon type structure. And then the nitrogenous bases, which is going to be the middle ladder rungs. Changing the sequence of those nucleotides or nitrogen bases is going to change the protein structure and the function. How does ATP provide energy for your body? Your body produces ATP through breakdown of glucose and converts the energy in glucose into a form that the body can use. This energy is contained in the chemical bonds between the phosphate groups and the tail of the ATP molecule. So energy is stored in those chemical bonds of the phosphate groups. ATP is the molecule used by cells as an energy source. Other things that you're going to see on this test is stuff from Unit 1. So I want you to make sure you review the scientific method. Can you tell me the next step in the process? If you saw a story problem, can you tell me what the next step would be? Can you determine the best conclusion? Can you see where an experiment needs to be fixed? Remember when we had results? Were the results valid results? Be able to tell me the scientific method and give examples of each step so that you know what those are. A group of skin cells form epithelium. Which lines, organs, cavities in the body? The epithelium is an example of what? The key word in this is a group of skin cells. So a group of skin cells would be tissue. There's cell, which is the basic unit. Multiple cells put together of the same type as tissue. Same tissue types of tissues, multiple put together is an organ. Organs of similar use are making up that organ system, and multiple organ systems make up an organism. Energy being released. What is an example of energy being released? Look at these answers. And if you said your pizza is digested and converted into carbon dioxide and water, you would be correct. That is releasing energy instead of using energy. So you should now feel a little more comfortable being able to take your test, hopefully scoring above a 70%. If you have questions, please reach out to me. Have a great day.